Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to crack the code on one of the biggest, thorniest challenges that modern companies are facing, performance management. I mean, think about it. In a world where your team can be literally scattered across continents and time zones, how on earth do you build a system that's fair, that's effective, and that actually, motivates people? Okay, let's dive right in.
So, our story kicks off back in 2012. You've got Donna Morris, a senior VP at Adobe, on a business trip in India. Now, she is seriously jet-lagged, totally sleep-deprived, and she's in an interview. And she just drops a bombshell, a completely spontaneous announcement. Adobe is going to abolish the performance review format. Can you imagine? That one single off-the-cuff remark ended up kicking off a global movement, a rebellion, really, against that dreaded once-a-year appraisal that everybody just loves to hate.
And this slide, it perfectly captures the massive shift that Adobe really pioneered. We're moving from the old way, that static annual event that feels totally disconnected from what you're actually trying to do, to the new way of continuous performance management. So what's the key difference? Well, it's not just a single event anymore. It's an ongoing process, and it's not just some chore you have to get through. It becomes a powerful strategic tool.
All right, here's the roadmap for our journey today. We're going to start by really defining this global catch-22. Then we'll unpack the 5 universal principles that actually solve it, see them in practice, and then wrap it all up by building your new global playbook.
So this brings us right to the heart of the matter, the central conflict for any company that operates globally. It's this constant tug of war between standardization and adaptation. How do you possibly create one fair system when your team is working across dozens of different cultures? It's a massive, massive headache. And really, this whole dilemma boils down to one core, incredibly tricky question that I promise you keeps HR leaders up at night. How can you be fair and consistent while also being flexible and culturally sensitive? I mean, these two things feel like they're in direct opposition, right? And that creates a genuine catch-22.
Let's break down these two opposing forces. On one hand, you've got standardization. You absolutely need it for fairness, for consistency, to make clear comparisons. But the huge risk is that it can be rigid and just culturally tone-deaf. Then, on the other hand, you have adaptation. And you need this too, for local cultures, for different legal requirements. The challenge there? It can easily lead to a messy, inconsistent system that feels totally unfair.
So, how do we solve this puzzle? Well, this is the big aha moment. The solution isn't to pick a side. No. It's to build your entire system on a foundation of principles that are, by their very design, both universal and adaptable. This is how you escape that catch-22.
And here they are, the 5 universal principles that make up our new framework. We've got cultural congruence, strategic congruence, thoroughness, inclusiveness, and finally, effective feedback. If you get these 5 things right, you can build a system that works anywhere and for anyone.
All right, let's get practical. It's time to dive into our first 2 principles in action, cultural and strategic congruence. First up, cultural congruence. Now this just means that your system has to make sense in the local culture. It's that simple. What works in one country can totally and completely fail in another. For instance, in a lot of Western cultures, performance is all about results, right? The bottom line. But in China, managers often focus way more on behaviors that reflect values like harmony and diligence. So a system that only measures results, it would be a really poor fit there.
And to make this principle adaptable, you just have to consider a few key cultural dimensions. For example, in an individualistic culture like the US, you'd focus on individual rewards. But in a collectivistic one like South Korea, you focus on the group. In a high-power distance culture like Malaysia, feedback is pretty much always top-down. But in a low-power distance place like Denmark, 360-degree feedback is totally welcome. See how that works? The same core principle just adapts.
Okay, our second principle is strategic congruence. All this means is there has to be a clear, unbroken line connecting every single person's daily work right up to the company's biggest goals. People have to see exactly how their contribution actually matters to the big picture.
So how do you put that into action? Well, first, you have to purposefully, intentionally link individual goals to the high-level strategy right from the planning stage. Don't just leave it to chance. And second, you've got to revisit those goals often. I mean, a goal you set in January could be totally obsolete by April. A fantastic real-world example of this is Roche Pharma in Singapore. They use a 90-day cycle for feedback and goal setting, which lets them stay super agile and always strategically aligned.
All right, on to the second half of our toolkit. We're going to focus now on the final 3 principles: thoroughness, inclusiveness, and feedback.
So, principle number 3 is thoroughness. This means you have to evaluate the whole picture.
Not just the results or what was done, but also the behaviors or how it was done. And let me tell you, this has become more critical than ever. In a post-pandemic, remote-first world, results can often be swayed by things completely outside an employee's control. Evaluating behavior gives you a much fairer assessment.
Now, a key way to measure behavior is to look at something called organizational citizenship behavior, or OCB. These are all those positive, voluntary things people do that aren't technically in their job description, like helping a colleague who's swamped, staying positive during a tough project, or speaking well of the company. The DC government, for example, actually evaluates all of its employees on OCBs like communication and customer service. It's a great model.
Our fourth principle is inclusiveness, and this one has two parts. First, when you're designing the system itself, you've got to get input from multiple groups to make sure you have buy-in. And second, when you're actually evaluating performance, you need to collect feedback from multiple sources, not just the manager.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, right? But collecting feedback from a bunch of different people can be incredibly time-consuming. So how do you actually do it? How do you get that inclusive feedback quickly and efficiently without creating some kind of bureaucratic nightmare? Well, the answer is a beautifully simple but powerful tool called the Performance Promoter Score, or PPS. It's built on just 3 little questions. First, a simple 1 to 10 rating. How likely are you to recommend working with this person? Second, an open-ended question to get the context. Why did you provide that rating? And third, and this is my favorite, a forward-looking, constructive question. What would it take to raise the score by just 1 point?
And this is exactly why the PPS is such an elegant solution. It perfectly solves our standardization versus adaptation problem. It's standardized using the same questions for everyone. It's flexible enough for any role imaginable. It's practical, taking just minutes to complete. And it's comprehensive, measuring both a person's competence and those crucial teamwork behaviors. It's just brilliant.
And that brings us to our fifth and final principle, effective feedback. Now, everyone agrees feedback is essential for growth, but get this, here's a startling fact. A major meta-analysis found that in a shocking 38% of cases, feedback programs actually made performance worse. Isn't that wild? It means the quality and the delivery of the feedback is absolutely everything. So what's the secret sauce? It's all about shifting from weakness-based feedback to strength-based feedback. Instead of just focusing on what someone's doing wrong, which frankly just makes people defensive, you focus on what's working well and figure out how to do more of it. That is what builds confidence and drives real, lasting improvement.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground, so let's bring it all together into one final summary. This is your new playbook for global performance management.
So here it is, your 5-point playbook. Number 1, be culturally congruent. Adapt to the local norms. Number 2, be strategically congruent. Link every bit of work back to the mission. 3, be thorough by measuring behavior, not just the results. 4, be inclusive by using awesome tools like the PPS. And 5, give effective, strengths-based feedback. And I'll leave you with one final question to chew on. As we move deeper and deeper into this work-from-anywhere world, which one of these 5 principles do you think becomes absolutely non-negotiable? It's a crucial thought for the future of work. And that's all for this explainer.